Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Good morning. I'm Bill Peard, and I am the Executive Director of the Iowa Cable and Telecommunications Association. We're bringing you Capitol Preview from our friends at Mediacom. This morning on Capitol Preview, we have the Speaker of the House for Iowa, Linda Upmeyer, with us this morning. She represents District 54, which is Clear Lake, Franklin, Butler, and Cerro Gordo. So thank you for tuning in, and we're going to start the conversation with the Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you know, this show is a show where we basically are finding out what our representatives and our state senators are doing up there at the State House and what really is driving them. So this is going to be a kind of a conversation between you and me. Yeah. And I'm just going to jump in with our first question. And how do you think this session is going so far?
You know, I think it's going really well. After an election, you always have a lot of new faces. And it took me a little while even to learn all the new faces in the legislature.
Oh, yeah.
But I've been so impressed with how so many of them just hit the ground running. They've taken on big bills. They've done a wonderful job. They're learning fast, and every 2 years you think this is the best crop you've ever seen of new legislators, and every 2 years you get a new one that you feel the same way about. Yeah. So that's really good for Iowa, and I appreciate that each of the districts does such a good job of elections.
Yeah. You know, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think people realize what a tough job that job is, to be a representative or a state senator. And the new ones I have met, you definitely are blessed for getting some of those.
We sure are. We sure are.
Yeah.
There's much to know, and they learn fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are some of the major topics that have been discussed so far in this session?
You know, when we came into session this year, we always reflect what we heard at the doors. One of the top things we heard at the doors was health care, specifically mental health. This year, we took on the children's mental health bill, which was very, very important, and we can talk more about that. But the other thing was education. And within the first 30 days, as promised, we were able to deliver the funding for the schools at $90 million, which is a big increase from what we've been able to do in some of the years past. But we wanted to make sure that we got that to the schools timely so they could build their budgets. We were successful in doing that. Additionally, recently, we've passed a bill on animal cruelty. We heard just so much on the news recently about some of those terrible, terrible stories. And we also learned that there were very few penalties that were very forceful in dealing with this. So we wanted to give law enforcement a better tool. And what we also know is that oftentimes people that abuse animals are the same people that have a tendency for violence. So we need to kind of intervene in those places, do something about it quickly. And I think the other thing that came up this year that recently is campus free speech. We've had a lot of people talk to us about wanting to make sure that the students on campuses all had the opportunity for free speech, and that's important. The last thing I think that has been wonderful this year is the amount of bipartisan work. We heard loud and clear that people are sick and tired of constant fighting. And I've been so impressed how people have worked together this year to craft bills.
Absolutely.
A lot of input, both sides of the aisle. And I think you can see from the votes on the vast majority of the bills has been very bipartisan. And I'm really happy about that. I think Iowans are too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to make your job a little nicer too, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. The House passed an extension of SAVE earlier this year. Why is that so important?
You know, we passed that bill last year. We passed it again this year and hope the Senate will pick it up. But the SAVE is, the extension of the SAVE is important for schools. The schools in our very growing communities to build new schools. Also,
Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask you if you would just explain SAVE
to
our viewers.
Absolutely.
Just before we launch into
it. Is a penny sales tax that goes directly to schools across the state for very specific purposes related to infrastructure. So it goes for building of new schools, the roofs and windows and major maintenance the schools have to do. Recently, that is expanded into safety and security. So if they need to put in camera and security systems, if they need the single entrance locks on the doors and the systems that make that all work, those are good opportunities. And it prevents that from all falling onto property taxes. So this is a tool so that every time you want to do one of those projects, you don't have to bond and take that revenue out of property tax funds. You have a pot of money available to, if it's a large project, you still bond, but you've got the revenue ready. And oftentimes you just can do it, the windows, the roofs, the work that needs to be done right out of that pot. So it's a big step forward.
Good. The House also passed a children's mental health bill. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The children's mental health bill is something we wanted to do for a while. We needed to get the adult system in place. It set up the regions and makes it a little easier to move this forward. In every single region, there will be a point of contact for families, for parents to go to if they have questions about whether their child should be tested, information about different kinds of behaviors perhaps, or illnesses. Additionally, there's a 24/7 crisis hotline. This is just the beginning. And a work group came together, made really a large number of recommendations. We know we have to do that in phases. We have to make sure we have the providers in place, and we're working on that right now as well. But this is the first step in what will be several steps, but it's a great step in getting that infrastructure in place for something that we desperately need.
Absolutely. Madam Speaker, the governor also proposed amending the Constitution to restore felons' voting rights. Can you tell me kind of where we are in that process?
You bet.
Too?
That passed out of the House this past week and is over to the Senate. I just want to thank the governor for her leadership on this topic. As she has said many times, this is about second chances. When someone has committed a crime and paid their penalty, that shouldn't follow them forever. And certainly the details here matter. There is policy that needs to be set up that goes to when and how these rights are granted back. But this is a good first step before the end of the next session, maybe even this session, but certainly by next session, we have to have the policy worked out. That's going to be a bigger task, and I know people are going to work hard to get that accomplished. But I think the governor showed great leadership on this topic. She's been doing it. She's been talking to people who are felons that have served their sentences, and this means a lot to them.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I think you both have shown great leadership because I think we are Iowans and second chances are important.
They are important.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
bet.
At the beginning of the session, you said rural Iowa would be a priority. What are you working on that would help you with that?
Well, once again, the governor sent us a good strategy, or at least a good focus to start on with Empower Rural Iowa. We said at the beginning of the session that we were going to look at every single bill that came through the chamber to see how we could help rural Iowa. It is not going to serve Iowans well over the long term if we continue to consolidate all of the jobs, all of the people, either in Des Moines or along the corridor. We need to take advantage of all the opportunities, all the infrastructure, and the wonderful communities that we have all over this state.
Absolutely.
So we look for those opportunities. Some of the biggest challenges surround housing and broadband.
Yeah.
So housing, we're going to put our thumb on the scale and make sure that the resources that we use for assisting with housing go in a vast majority, a big way, out to rural Iowa so they can have a place for that workforce to live when they want to grow their business. Additionally, the broadband, as you well know, that is critical if people want to telecommute, if people want to expand their businesses in the community where they live. Without good broadband, they just can't do that. But I think we've got everybody working together toward that end, and I look forward to really making a difference in our rural Iowa.
Yep, we're a great state full of very smart people, and I'm sure it can be done. So, what policy issues are still left in this session for you?
Well, I think we've got some work to do on property taxes. That's one of those things when we're knocking doors. It comes up fairly regularly. What can you do about my property taxes? What we've learned is that much of it has to do with transparency. We read in our newspaper or get a letter in the mail that our rates are going down, and everybody's really excited, or that they're stable. I'm seeing a lot of rates at the schools, cities, counties going to stay stable this year. That's wonderful until they find out that the assessments have gone up pretty dramatically.
Yeah,
So in
right.
that calculation can be a pretty substantial property tax increase that really surprises them. So first of all, I'd like us to all figure out a way that as we speak about our budgets, we're talking about this was last year's budget, here is the new budget. Everybody anticipates that it's going to need to probably fund more things or that they'll become more costly, but having a very clear understanding of how much it's going up, and to the extent that we can, work as good partners with the communities to try and hold those property taxes down. We did the backfill a few years ago. I don't think we're going to be doing that, but we do think there are ways that we can all work together to hold property tax a little more stable. And we're all putting our heads together. That's a work in progress.
Absolutely.
But hope we can get it done.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, you might have mentioned this, but could you just kind of tell me where we are with the budget process right now?
Well, I'm pretty excited because this year, with a little more stable revenue coming in, and we believe that we're pretty confident that it would be coming in. We were able to start budgets almost immediately. Our new members have been digging into budgets. We've got some new subcommittee chairs working on those budgets, and they've been working really hard, asking questions, making sure dollars are put in the right places to maximize opportunities for Iowans. We should have budget bills already coming out of committee this week, perhaps. So we're, in my mind, about a month ahead of schedule with budgets, and I hope we keep working on that.
That's what I'm hearing too.
Yeah, there's no reason to wait for the budgets till the last minute. We can get those done timely, especially when we know what our revenue is.
Yeah.
And so I'm
You might
pleased by
even
that.
get out of here because I know
I'm hoping.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of important things to do back in their districts too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
And when the
yeah.
weather starts turning nice,
Right.
people start giving me ground temperature, soil temperature reports. And so the farmers let me know when they're ready to go back to work. But the fact is, we do our best work in our districts.
Yeah,
And so getting our legislative session wrapped up, getting the work done that is before us, and if there are very complicated issues that are going to take a lot of time, we have an interim. The General Assembly is 2 years. So we can spend time over the interim ironing out some of those things that are more complex, that we need more input. So I think there's a great opportunity to complete our work timely.
Madam Speaker, we're coming up on closing this, but just real briefly, if you could tell me, what do you think the most important bill that you passed this session would be or is?
Oh, wow, that's always a hard question because everybody probably give you a different answer.
Right.
But I think for all Iowans, the broadest bill that critically important, I think, is children's mental health. The fact that we hear and know that there are more and more challenges all the time, and having a system that is ready to deal with those challenges, I think is going to be critically important in the future. That's an important bill.
Very good. Well, that takes us to the end of our program this morning. I want to thank you, Madam Speaker. You've been a great interview, and you've given us a lot of information for Iowans to digest. So thank you for coming here this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be able to have a conversation and share some of these things with Iowans that they may not hear about every single day.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Speaker. We know you're a hard worker.
Thank you.
Please join us in another episode of Capitol Preview.